Before the interview starts, I wanted to record this quick introduction. As I was interviewing Marcus, what came to mind is a saying, extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. And when you listen to the interview, you are going to hear some extraordinary claims made by Marcus. I wanted to record this just to vouch for Marcus, my personal experience with him. I've known him for a couple of years on Facebook. This is the first time we've sat down face-to-face via Zoom. But I have known him, and he's a very quiet person, very reserved. Doesn't brag about the things that he's able to do, is actually very reluctant to share them. I chased Marcus down for a couple of months to do this interview because he really doesn't like seeking the publicity. He's only done one interview before. He doesn't charge for his services. Again, he's not out promoting himself, trying to make himself famous. As I said, I've known him for a while, and he's very reserved about talking about this. So I expect that skeptics will still be skeptics, and that's fine. I did want to record this to vouch for Marcus, though, and to say that my belief is that one day this will be commonplace. I believe that maybe one day everybody will know Marcus's name, and this video itself might be in an archive somewhere as one of the first interviews he did. So I hope you enjoyed the interview, and I hope you get as much out of it as I did. Let's start recording. Hey, everybody. This is Brian Smith with Grief to Growth, and I'm back for another episode of the show. Today I've got with us Marcus Hoodie Lang. Do I call you Marcus or do I call you Hoodie?
Look, Marcus is good. Hoodie's from the old days. It's just remained. Okay,
cool. Well, I've got Marcus with me. I've known Marcus for, I guess, a couple of years now on Facebook. This is the first time we've actually talked face-to-face or over Zoom. Marcus is in Australia, Sydney, Australia. So working at the time is interesting because it's 5 o'clock in the evening for me here. It's 9 o'clock in the morning for him. It's winter for me here. It's summer for him. So it's kind of wild. But really appreciate you doing this, Marcus. Glad to finally sit down and get to meet you face-to-face.
Oh, that's nice. I don't do these very often. So when it feels right, I do it.
And yeah, I know you don't do it very often. And, I've been kind of chasing you down to get you to do this. And a couple of weeks ago, I had a dream that we were doing a podcast together. And I was like, okay, I'm going to take this as a sign. I'm going to reach out to him again. So I appreciate you being responsive.
And you had that dream at a time where I said, I'm not doing any more podcasts, any more interviews. And look now.
Yeah, I know you don't like talking about yourself, but you're fascinating. Like I said, I've known you for a couple of years on Facebook. I feel like we have a brotherhood already. We both have a daughter in spirit. I knew you have at least one other daughter. Do you have any other children?
I have one more son.
Okay.
And I've got my little Helena granddaughter, who's a little person, and everybody I know on the internet loves her.
Yeah, I've seen her pictures. I actually thought that was your daughter. Okay, so I just found out that's your granddaughter.
Yeah, no, that's my granddaughter.
And your daughter in spirit, what's her name?
Rebecca.
Rebecca, okay.
Yeah, funnily enough about the name, though, is that because she left slightly before birth, and the only name that her mother and I had discussed at the time was that, but there was nothing further than that. Now, when she came back 20 years later, she called herself Rebecca, which I thought was pretty amazing.
Yeah.
She knew her name.
Yeah.
Obviously, the name came from her.
All right, so she did pass before birth.
Yeah, not long before birth. So I didn't actually get to meet her because I didn't want to at the time. I'd back then I handled things by ignorance.
Mm-hmm. So let's talk about Rebecca. Because I know if you're like I am, I love to talk about my daughter. So I know that you said she passed before birth, but you have an ongoing relationship with her now.
Yeah, well, that's right. At the time when it all happened, I treated it the same way I treat everything else. I just sort of put it out of the mind, didn't get to meet her, so she didn't really exist, that type of thing. Mm-hmm. And it was 20 years later. I guess she had to wait till the right moment. She couldn't get through before because I was just completely closed. And after the accident I had, actually it was just before that, the haunting, which brought on a spontaneous onset of the mediumship I'd been trying to keep at bay all those years. Mm-hmm. She jumped at the chance, and she was the second person who ever came to us, or came to me anyway at that time. And she's started leaving, because I was using a physical method of Scrabble tiles, whereas one spirit friend used them a lot. This was in the early days. And she started using that too, and I was getting messages like, "Happy birthday, Dad, I love you," or "You're my hero, Dad." And it was really mind-blowing, because here I am connecting with somebody I didn't even think was still alive. I mean, I had no knowledge back then. All I knew is when I was a kid, I was scared of ghosts, and I blanked it completely.
So did you see spirit when you were a kid then?
I did, yeah. The first
Okay.
time I would have been, I must have been about 3 years old. I used to go in the garage and jump all over Mum's big bags of wools and materials for her work, and I wasn't allowed to, of course.
Uh-huh.
So I remember jumping on one. I was laying on my back and looking up, and then all of a sudden, completely solid, a woman appeared from the shoulders up, and she had this weird old hat. It looked like the old mourning clothes that the Victorians wore.
Mm-hmm.
So, of course, my little young mind turned that into a witch, and that scared the bejesus out of me. That was not a good first impression of what was happening. And, of course, nobody believed me, just a kid's imagination. So I learned very young not to talk about these things. And the second, when it started, was I was about 5, and I used to wake up in the middle of the night, and there'd be 3 old ladies in that same mourning gear. So I think that was connected to that first.
Uh-huh.
And they used to stand around my bed talking about me to each other. I just pretended I was asleep, but I could hear them.
Yeah.
Mentally, though. And that was my first experience with that as well.
Uh-huh.
I find out now that they were relatives.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, great-grandmothers and things like that I would never have met.
So you've had this ability since you were young.
Yeah.
Rebecca comes, but doesn't quite come in all the way. I mean, she passes before she comes in, and then she comes to you several years later. You said you had some sort of an awakening before she came?
Yeah. Because of all the experiences as a childhood, which, of course, my family just didn't have the awareness to explain it. So they didn't discount me, but they didn't understand to give me a proper explanation. So I learned to stop it through ignorance, and it worked. It worked. Not forever, but it worked. And I moved my family about 12 years ago now I got a couple of apartments up in the Gold Coast, which is a place I've always gone for holidays. I love. And so we moved up there, but that turned into an absolute nightmare. The place was haunted. And unbeknownst to me at the time, I was all of a sudden starting to develop as a physical medium, which meant there were energies available. It was a perfect storm, because that nasty little spirit that lived there soon worked out that he had ability to energies where he could throw things, and it became a poltergeist haunting. So we didn't just jump in at the little end, it was right into the deep end, and it was terrifying. We stayed there for a year until we couldn't take it anymore, and just like a horror movie, we fled in the middle of the night. That's true, in the middle of the night, left everything there. I was on my Harley, she was in the car following, and I got hit by a car just only 100 k's from where I was trying to get to, which was 1,000 kilometers away. The further the better. And it was during that process of being hit that I was just blown wide open. All those walls, that was gone. They smashed it along with my bones. And at that point, Rebecca, Les being a childhood friend I had long ago, and Rebecca, they were able to jump through like bang. Now, it wasn't just like that. It took a little bit longer. I realised there was something happening, so my wife and I tried to expand on that and see where it'd go. I had no knowledge of what was going to happen back then. But after that, it was about 6 months later, our home was robbed. I sent Vicky to the bank, and of course I couldn't work anymore after the accident, or since. I got her to withdraw the last few grand out of my bank account that I had so we could survive on it. And as she walked out of the bank, she was attacked by a group of addicts with knives, and they cut her bag off her with my money in it and cut her in the process. And anyway, with that, they left me absolutely broke, no food, nothing. And I, of course, sorry, mate, of course that turned into anger. And it took probably another 3 months. I just wanted to understand why these people would do that to me. And it was one day that I just, out of the blue, all of a sudden I understood, because I had a major operation and I knew what the pull towards those pain pills were. All of a sudden I was experiencing me being dependent after the operation on these pills, which was no different to what the people who stole my money were. So there were the seeds of empathy there, and it was like an explosion. It just all of a sudden in the heart, I had to forgive them. And I know it's all cliche and everything, but the power of forgiveness, it's incredible. When I said, all right, I forgive you people, I understand, I've walked in your shoes, blah, 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 it was like weight off the shoulders. That was my awakening, that moment there, and I can pinpoint it right to that moment. I felt the frequency shift. I felt it. It was an incredible feeling that I haven't felt again since.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah. So that was the awakening.
So with that shift, Rebecca and Les are able to walk through and start communicating. And Les has become your guide since then, right?
He took on the role as my guide because I'm disabled. He's took on the role of my guide. So he makes sure I take a tablet at the right time, a heart tablet, which is only for blood pressure really. But I forget, and he makes sure he'll put it on the table in front of me. We were best friends when I was a child, and he passed at 34 years old. It was the day before I turned 15. So he was like an older brother to me back then, and he was just brilliant to me. Took me out everywhere, and just like a real older brother who took me on, because my parents, they used to argue a lot. And when he died, he'd never stopped loving me, so he was always involved in my life, even though I didn't see it or realise it at the time.
Right.
And he took the chance to jump in, and he took on that role. And he's also the one that introduced me to the spirit team that I work with too. So he's played a major part in all this.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to go back to a little bit when you talked about the Scrabble tiles, because I don't think people might not understand that. But from what I understand, you put Scrabble tiles in a box and put it in the dark, right? And then tell me from there.
All right, we put them in the box, and of course you've got to actively look at it and make sure there's no words that have been made accidentally out of that. So you move them all around. When you're happy that there's completely a mix, there's no words at all, take a photo so you've got some comparison. This is especially in the early days, not so much for me now like this, but and then I just cover them and I put them on the floor, or if I'm not expecting an answer very quickly, I'll put them under the bed. But if we're using them for a bit of a chat, because most of the time they say I don't listen, and that's true because it gets tiring after a while, I'll put them on the floor, and then after a while I'll lift up the cover that I've got on them and I'll see them arranged into complete sentences.
Yeah, I've seen pictures of it. It's complete sentences.
Yeah, and they even use terms like LOL, and which, I mean, they went long before those sorts of terms existed. So it shows how they keep an eye on the language of the day, and they use that. Rebecca's her message is more about love and dad and daughter, and that sort of stuff that you'd write to each other if you could.
Sure.
The day on a telex when you couldn't write too much.
Yeah.
They're just short messages. But with Les, a lot of the time he'll use that when I'm not listening, so I can't ignore for too long, even pretending he knows when I'm ignoring.
Okay, I didn't realize that Les was sending you pictures or messages through the tiles too.
Yeah, he was the first.
Okay.
Actually, it was when we moved into here. This was supposed to be temporary, but it is very temporary now because we're building a house. When we moved into here, I had thought that nasty spirit had followed us from where we were fleeing. So I was just needed to get some answers. So I put them down and asked to write your name. Tell me who you are, blah, blah, blah. And the first letters that were written was Les, and I knew straight away. I just knew it was him. And I was jumping for joy.
Yeah. So he was trying to get your attention.
Yeah, well, he certainly did.
Yeah.
And he's the one that encourages me now if I get a bit slack. And I do.
So tell me about your so you had an NDE as well, right?
Yeah. That was the proper NDE that I talk about. That was in 1991.
Okay.
And it was a bad marriage I was living in. There was just no love coming back this way. So, that leads you into depression and all the rest of that. Loveless marriage makes you feel. And I got very depressed, and I decided as you do when I was 20 years old, I was. So I went down with the black dog and didn't understand why and all of that. Well, I understood why, but you know. Anyway, life got very boring and I just didn't want to be a part of it anymore. So I decided to take that into my own hands, which would have been a stupid move had I been successful. And I did something about it. And the next minute, I remember waking up on the bed and thinking to myself, I have never felt so good in my life. That was the first thought in my head, but I was still within the body.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And the second thought was, oh, I can't move. I can't move my limbs. And I thought, well, that's strange. I said, but I didn't care. So I thought, what's going on? I thought to myself, I must be meditating. And it was about 2 seconds later, I said to myself, I don't know how to meditate. This isn't meditating. What the hell is going on? And that's the point I started. I totally forgotten about what I did.
Okay.
I started rising, and I rose out of the body like this, and I could probably stopped at ceiling height, to be honest.
Mm-hmm.
And I could see back through myself at the body on the bed. And that's when I started to think, oh, I did it. I'm dead. But my plan was I didn't expect to be alive.
Right.
When I was dead. I expected the cessation of life, of consciousness. That's what I thought, like a candle, putting a candle out. Yeah, but it didn't work that way. I was still very much alive, not in the body. I was looking down at the body. And that was a pretty freaky thought. And I could change focus and I could still see myself like this, but by changing focus, I could see another body, which was obviously the spirit body.
Mm.
And at that early time, I could just change focus. And then it was probably a few minutes there that I got to think and wonder. And then it was just like lightning. Bang. I was from here to another place. No tunnel, no light, none of the classic stuff that's usually often reported, but just from here to there. And I was tethered to another person up ahead, and he was leading. Obviously, I just went with it. It just felt right to go with it. There was no fear at all. Mm-hmm. And he took me, and we were going through this beautiful forest. It's probably a place that I find a lot of tranquility in, so I think that's probably why it was a forest. And I'll stop that again. I'll turn that on silent. Sorry about that.
It's all right.
Yeah. And then flying through this beautiful forest. Oops. Gosh. Phone calls. So flying through there, and I didn't know where we were going, but we eventually got to a clearing with a lot of rocks there, and there were other people sitting there. Mm-hmm. And I was told to sit there. I didn't recognise that it was Les who I was tethered to. That was taking the time. Mm-hmm. He was appearing in his spirit body, which at the time, without those human features, I couldn't have said that's Les. And it was too early for me to recognise energetic imprints, so I had no idea who it was at the time. Hmm. And I did know, because everything was so telepathic, you'd think of something and then bang, the answer was there. So I just knew that the other people sitting around where I was told to sit were also having NDEs. And the only thing I can explain is this was a place where certain NDEs were given opportunities to, maybe it's where they say, do you want to go back? Do you want to stay? Because that's what happened to me. But with me, there was an opportunity to come back to do a specific role here, which would be beneficial to a lot of people, including myself. Mm-hmm. And others around me, I just sort of had this knowing that they had similar opportunities being offered towards them. So maybe these people were giving roles just like I was. And after that was a while. I made the agreement. I said, yeah, okay. I was offered a specific role to be developed into something I'd never heard of, which was physical mediumship. So I agreed to that, not knowing what I was doing, just knowing that it was supposed to help a lot of people. And at the time, that's a funny thing too, because I was usually a selfish person. I would have been the first person I thought of, and my comfortability. But it was the thought that whatever I was going to do was going to help a lot of people. It just seemed much more important than what I wanted, which was a strange sensation for somebody like me. Yeah. It was the first when I noticed, hey, I'm thinking differently. So I took that role. And as soon as I said yes, it was like within seconds, everything went in reverse. We were flying back through the forest, except it was all in reverse and at super high speed. And bang, back into the body and awake. But not feeling so good at that point because you know, the body wasn't too well when this happened.
Yeah.
But obviously it was still capable of sustaining life.
Right.
And I'm grateful for that. I mean, if the body can't sustain life, if you've done too much damage, you're not coming back.
Right. Then you can't come back. Right.
Exactly. The body's, unfortunately, what predicts whether we stay here or not during an NDE, whether we can return. A body in a car accident that's been broken to pieces, you know, you can't have an NDE and then go back to that. There's nothing to go back to.
Yeah, you know, a lot of people will ask about NDEs and why some people come back and some people don't. And one of the factors is you have to have a receptacle.
Exactly. It's got to be able to sustain life.
Right.
In some capacity.
Right. So you have this NDE, you agree to become a physical medium. You don't even know what a physical medium is. Nope. So what do you do from there?
That's where it gets even weirder. The first person I told was my wife, who was the whole reason I wanted to get out of there in the first place, get out of Dodge City. And believe it or not, she was the only one out of all my friends or anybody that I told that believed me, which was very strange. But nothing happened. Like, there was definitely a strange change in myself, because all of a sudden I was so much more spiritual. I'd never been a spiritual person. There was just like that connection that you have there, you bring back with you, and you still feel that same way. So there was that. And all of a sudden I had this ability, like psychic abilities, where I could hold things and tell people all about, and I was able to astral travel, which is something I'd never been able to do, and I was able to do it at will, very easily. And it was more of a party game back then, because I still didn't understand it, whereas I'd say to someone, I'll tell you what's around your house, let me describe it for you. And it was always right, and it was always mind-blowing. So they brought back some little things like that, but it was, in reality, all that lasted about 6 months. And as it started to wane, nothing had happened. These people didn't come back. And I thought, well, I don't know what a physical medium is, but I'm pretty sure I'm not one. And I started to turn against it again, because I thought, oh, well, maybe everyone was right. It was a hallucination. How can I prove it's not? Nothing out of the ordinary has been happening, except for my, which I would call psychic ability rather than mediumship, which I'm not a great psychic. I'm more of a medium. And it was 20 years later. The accident on the bike.
Okay.
That's when they all came back.
Okay. Yeah, you know, spirit works in a different time frame, right? I mean, we think, you know, okay, I come back and be a physical medium. When's it going to happen? It should be happening by now, right? So it was 20 years later when that actually really opened up for you.
Yeah, see, it's all about opportunity. And spirit also always, one thing they always talk to me about is, because I'm an impatient person, I really am, and to their annoyance. So they always talk to me about perfect timing, what they call perfect timing.
Yeah, which is annoying.
It is annoying, because perfect timing usually means years away. That's what I found.
Time, yeah.
That's exactly what I found. If they say it's in perfect timing, then I know I'll have to be patient and wait.
Yeah.
I'm not patient, so that's really hard.
So what the physical mediumship, what does it look like? I know you do apports, you've had materializations.
Yep. Okay. Well, physical mediumship, the description I use for it is mental mediumship. For a start, mental mediumship is where information comes through to a medium, and then that medium there relays that to you as a sitter. That's mental mediumship. That's your classic mental mediumship. Physical mediumship is very different, because in physical mediumship, any phenomena that is happening is not restricted to the medium. It can be experienced by everyone present using one or more of the senses. So it's a much more physical, where the medium in physical mediumship, I'm speaking for myself because we're rather unique in what we do.
Yeah.
The medium in my case, I just have this relationship with this spirit personalities who create the team, and they're all sorts of people with all different skills in life that bring their own thing to the seance. Now, in that physical mediumship, which means the people I know and have become friends with within the spirit team, they can come and interact with other people, whether that's in a seance room situation, which we do, but we don't restrict it to that. We're more of an experimental group, so we're not just happy to sit there and do it the way it was. We want to see how much more we can do.
Yeah.
So now we've learned there's a whole lot of phenomena that we can take into daylight that isn't restricted by ectoplasm or all the other things that need darkness and that. We found that apports, for a start, they can be done anywhere at any time if the team are willing.
Mm-hmm.
They always get the last word. That's not always when I want it. I stood there once going, well, now? And then I stood there many times going, please don't do this now. Please don't do this now. And so things like that, that's very good.
I want to just kind of emphasize a point you talked about, because a lot of people ask about physical mediumship. Most of it's done in the dark. And people ask, why does it have to be done in the dark? Because that brings up suspicion, right? You're sneaking around the room. What are you doing? But
exactly why we moved away from that.
Yeah, but you're
more of a proof base, if we could.
Yes, you've done apports in the light. You've done materializations in the light, I believe, too, right?
Yep, had one perfect materialization in light, in daylight, which is, I mean, that's top of the pile for a physical medium. Now, that's only one. We haven't been able to do another one since to that quality. Mm-hmm. So a lot of development to go there. But, I mean, that's what a start.
Oh, yeah.
That means it can happen.
Right. Once it happens once, it can happen again.
Exactly. So it's just finding the right combination. We have physics, they have physics.
Right.
And everything needs to be perfect for something like that. That sort of materialization is usually done in the dark, mm-hmm. in the seance, because everything that needs to come together is a lot less. So the variables are a lot less. The conditions don't need to be so much because there's so much to take in for light. And besides that, ectoplasm, if it's an ectoplasmic materialization, that needs complete darkness because that has its own properties that are quite dangerous to the medium. But there's also photoplasm, which is a little less susceptible to problems with light. And that's what a lot of mediums are using in this day.
Okay, that's new to me. I didn't know about that.
Yeah, well, that's how we do these materializations. They're not ectoplasmic based, so therefore those restrictions aren't on the materialization.
Okay.
It's all about energy. It's probably very similar to the stories you read all the time about somebody whose grandfather, who's been dead for 10 years, came and sat on the lounge with them and talked to them, or stood in front of them and gave them a message. Those people say that their relatives were as solid as you or I. That's the same thing. That's an energetic materialization, which many times doesn't even need a medium. But when doing it in controlled circumstances, that's when you're looking at bringing in people's relatives and things like that.
Now, do you sit in a regular circle, or can you do this on your own?
We can do this on our own. Me and Vicky are the only ones here at the moment, so we sit on our own at this moment. But
oh, really?
There's a house being built, and in that house is a purpose-built seance room. So once that's done in about 6 months, it'll be regular again, once a week. That's the home circle. That's a dedicated group of sitters that always work with me. Mm-hmm. Then we'll be opening it up for other people too to come and experience physical mediumship, but without the charge. I never have charged, and I never will charge because I don't need to. If I needed to, it'd be a different story. Mm-hmm. Just basically to share that with them so they can have the experience, and not with a room full of 29 other people, which is typical in public mediumship.
Yeah, that is awesome.
I like to work.
I didn't realize you were that far along. That's incredible.
Well, I've met with a lot of people, like Karen. Do you know Karen Swain?
I do know of Karen. Yes, Karen.
Yeah. Well, with my local IANS meeting in Sydney, she comes to that many times. And she was talking to me about apports, and I was showing her some pictures of what we get, just typical stuff. And she said, "Oh, I want my own apport." The next minute, I can't even tell what it was. I can't think of what it was. It might have been a coin, but no, it was a crystal of some sort of stone. And as soon as she said, "Oh, I want one too," it fell from the roof, hit me on the shoulder, and bounced onto the floor, and everyone was, ah! So things like that, they can be done pretty much anywhere, because the spirit team, we're always connected, unlike some mediums who just seem to be connected in seance and then go about living their lives. We're always connected, so at any time it's just a thought away. Like I say, "Les, where are you?" And like genie.
So
Here I am.
you're not going in the trance or sitting in a cabinet or.
In the beginning, all the time did that,
Mhm.
all the time, and that's a great way to develop it. That's your
Right.
traditional way. But me being far from traditional,
Mhm.
I always like to push the boundaries. And at this point, I'm able to stay awake and aware during these things. My biggest gripe, because I'm not one of those mediums who just sit there and never complain. They respect my opinion, so if I've got something to say, they'll listen. I used to always complain that all the sitters get the good stuff. They get to feel the invisible hands touching them, and they get to talk to the voices and things like that. But I don't. I'm
Right.
asleep, and by the time I'm awake, it's all over. I've missed it. And that used to drive me nuts. I wanted to play too.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we worked on that. And just like there are some phenomena that can come out of the dark room, as we've done, there is a lot of stuff that I can stay awake and aware with rather than have to traditionally go out in trance like one would expect.
Wow.
The only time I need to go out into an altered state now is if they want to speak through my organism, which is another thing I complain about and hate, because I try to make things as evidential as they possibly can.
Right.
And whenever a voice comes out of another human being, medium or not, it's not as evidential as a voice that's coming out of the air right next to you as a sitter listening to it.
Yeah.
So that's where we try to get it going. And we do. We get periods of that, but that's very difficult to sustain.
Okay. Yeah. Wow. That's, I've talked and not talked to, but I've seen some other physical mediums, their work. I haven't been doing a seance myself. And I know some of these things. I knew that there's some things happening in light. And I know a lot of times it seems to have to go in trance. It's got to be in dark. So you've kind of you've gone to the next level. And that's fantastic because like you said, the skeptics are always going to have objections, right? So if there's a voice coming out of you and he's just changing his voice. He's just
you can see how that could get shut down.
Yeah. So yeah, you're doing some amazing things. So even beyond the physical mediumship, and one of the things you were telling me about, you've got some sort of electronic communication going on with the spirit world now.
Yeah, we have.
I know you started off with texting, right?
Yeah. Well, I've always been a tech head. My whole working life, I was an engineer and communications engineer. So that's my interest. The team of spirit people that work with me, well, they're all engineers and technicians, and it's like we're perfect together. So we all have basically the same sort of mindset in the beginning.
Okay.
I started getting, I should have had one to show you. I started getting text messages about 2 years ago. We were using one phone, and this was with Les, and he would use that phone, set up a text message, put in the same phone number so it would always come back to the same machine. And he'd write the text message and send it, and then I'd get it like a normal message, and I'd read it, and it'd be whatever he wants to say. He calls me Bud. That's my nickname with the spirit team. So whenever anything ends in Bud, I know who it's from.
Yeah.
And as time progressed, I got another iPhone because we're using the Apple. That just seems to work. And so now they use a first iPhone as the transmitter and a second one as a receiver, and that works a lot better. But that's text messaging, but that's text messaging from here within our realm. It's not like they're sitting on their side with a
So you're talking about two physical iPhones in this realm. They're texting from one to the other.
Yeah, exactly. They're able to do that, which is really good. And then from that, they started to use the notepad feature where they could type in and just leave a page of whatever they wanted there. And then with the texting, they started, and this is lovely because I get to see all the nuance, all the personality within this. They have started using the handwriting feature, which is in the Apple iOS. Whereas you can send a text message, but you handwrite it with your finger or with a pen.
Okay.
And you can send that, and on the other end, on the receive end, you sit there and you can watch it being written in near real time, just seconds after it's done.
Wow. And
they've started doing that. So now I'm seeing their actual handwriting, a physical handwriting. You can tell they don't do it very often because it's pretty elementary. lots of spelling mistakes too. But that's really beautiful. So they've kind of mastered that sort of technology, and now we're trying other things. Like I got a specific microphone, quite a large microphone. I'll bring it around and show you. This big fella here.
Oh wow.
And they had their technicians come in and rewired it basically, and to what they think is going to work to allow them to bring in their voices straight to the microphone as we speak here. The idea is they would be also able to speak as a third party. Now, it hasn't worked as well as we wanted. The only one we're getting so far who's able to use it is Troy, who's our team technician.
Okay.
The idea was for loved ones to be able to use it, so I could reunite you yourself. The idea would be you to be able to speak.
So you've gotten voice message or voice communications from Troy through that microphone?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. But nobody else works. When anyone else tries it, it's just blank. There's something to do with the energy. So they're still working out that problem. And I do have all faith in them that they will do it.
Yeah.
It's working with one spirit personality. He has to work with others. They just got to find out the difference. He's educated. Maybe that's the difference. But whatever it is, I'm sure it's teachable. And it will happen. But that's taking a little longer than I anticipated.
Remember that perfect timing thing, right? Because you just told me about this. It was just a few weeks ago that we first spoke about this. So it hasn't been that long, right?
No, it hasn't been that long at all. I've only had it for about 4 weeks since they returned it.
Yeah.
Oh, you wouldn't believe it if I told you that they arranged all the shipping, where to send it.
You shipped it?
I'm not joking. Yeah, they shipped it. They shipped it to a technician that they thought could do the work on Earth. And I got it back from there. And it's like, you would be amazed if you could understand how these things can be done.
You know, what's interesting to me, Marcus, is, okay, so are you familiar with the work of Sonia Rinaldi?
Yeah.
Okay.
Very much so.
Sonia Rinaldi's doing her thing with EVPs, and now she's got the light thing where she's able to do images, and she thinks she's going to be able to do video. I'm on the Soul Film project with Gary Schwartz, and he's working something that's super sophisticated, super sensitive, highly specialized equipment. But what I've noticed is, like with Sonia, she's the only one that can do what she does. I mean, no one else can take her equipment and do it. And you seem to be required for what you do. You're being a physical medium. And Gary is trying to work on something that won't require that. So, but all these things are kind of running in parallel. And these engineering teams on the other side seem to be reaching out to different people. They've really
come forward. It's time.
Yeah.
It's the perfect time. And I think now, I don't know where this will go, but I'm assuming at some point the mobile phone would be used because everybody carries one.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of technology in those devices. I'm pretty sure that in the future, somehow that'll be incorporated into the work that these technicians from that side are doing.
And that brings up another interesting point, because we think about the spirit world as being it's all etheric, and there's no physical, there's no technology, right? They don't need engineers.
Yeah, so people have ideas about that.
Yeah. So it sounds like what we're hearing is whatever it is, wherever they are, they do have technology that they need to develop to kind of work with our technology. And it's a development effort.
They want the same thing as we do. Communication.
Yeah.
They're just as interested as we are. They're just as fascinated as we are. And they also are quite aware of the healing that will happen as a result of this, which is probably where they're really coming from.
Yeah, I think that's what it's really about. It's my theory is, I think for a long time, humanity realized that we are eternal beings, we're spirit beings, whatever. It was accepted. The last couple 100 years, we've said, nah, we're just an accident of nature. Like you said, when we're done, we're done. And it's causing real problems in our world. I mean,
it is.
And so we need to have that connection. I think that's part of it. And I heard Sonia Rinaldi speaking. She said, well, we're just getting to the point where our technology, it's still primitive compared to what they have, I guess. So we're just getting to the point where they can use our technology.
That's exactly right. When they, I mean, gosh, I couldn't imagine what one of their technician rooms would look like. Oh, the equipment they must have. But I'm sure that that's just most of it not compatible with what we have, which has got to be considered primitive compared to their side. So they have to work with what we have. And we're at this level of technology and at this day and age, which is a massive step ahead than what we were. If ever it was going to be done, now is the time where I think we have the equipment and the circuits and the, you know, the semiconductors, all the things they need.
Yeah, it's really interesting to me because my background's engineering too, and so and I've sold technology for a long, long time. So back when I was selling, you know, mainframes and selling hard drives that were as big as a refrigerator that were 2.5 gig, and now I just bought an 8 terabyte hard drive yesterday for $120. You know, so technology is just in the last 30, 40 years has just gone crazy. So, you know, maybe in the next 5 or 10 years, you know, we'll get to the point where we can actually have some reliable communication.
I think so. That's a good time frame. I really do.
So, I really appreciate you giving me this update and this insight into what you're working on. Because, like I said, I'm kind of tracking Sonia and working with Gary on the soul phone, and it's really encouraging to know that the other side's, you know, working on the technology, working with different people. And, you know, maybe we won't need super specialized equipment, but so right now it seems like you're unique in that they're working somehow through you.
Yeah, in this case, there's one of the conditions is the physical medium.
Yeah,
and that's where it can fall apart a little bit because not everyone's a physical medium.
Yeah,
we need
devices. You know, it'd be great to, you know.
Yeah.
We get to the point where, you know, we could expose this to the general public where they could see and the work you're doing is so exciting and so promising.
Well, my point is because it needs a physical medium, it's okay because I'll be there in the equation, whether we do it over here or if it's a one-on-one, because I'll be doing a lot more stuff when I have this home built. Right now, I'm pretty restricted. We're living in basically a tiny little granny flat until we get to move out, and you just can't do anything like that here.
Mm-hmm.
It's too cluttered. You can't get that right feeling of when you feel you can meditate, you get to that point where, oh yeah, it's perfect. You can't get that in this room. It's just too small.
Yeah. Well, you're getting.
We did some good table tipping in here the other week.
Did you really? Wow.
Yeah, we actually had it rise up into the air like that.
So just you and Vicky?
Yeah, just me and Vicky.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
That's really it's really amazing. And, you know, like you said earlier, again, back to the perfect timing thing. I mean, I've only known you for a couple of years, and I've seen things like, first it was the Scrabble tiles, then you're like, oh, we're texting, and then you were telling me about you were doing something with the Apple Watch. They would like.
Oh yeah, the Apple Watch. Oh, I've got to tell you about that. This is probably the most promising at the moment. This microphone was supposed to take over from this, but anyway, until that does, the Apple Watch. If you have 2 Apple Watches, they come with a feature called walkie-talkie, which means I can just press a button, not have to initiate any kind of call. Press a button on here, and the other watch, which we'll call Vicky's watch, will open up with a speaker and sound you can speak through. It's just like a walkie-talkie. Mm-hmm. Well, Troy from the Spirit team is able to use that really well. Mm-hmm. He clicks from her end, opens it up on mine, and because it's a watch, it's not great for this, so I've got to hold it up to here to make anything out. But it's good, and we get a few minutes out of that, probably 2-3 minutes before it dies.
Now, have you ever been able to record any of this?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, I have. I've got 2 sessions of that recorded, and it's nothing exciting. It's just him talking to me about how things are going to be done and how they should be done, what's working, what isn't. Nothing really exciting for most people, but the point is we're investigating all the ways that we can have voice from that side come through onto existing equipment.
Right. Well, it's exciting to me. I don't care if he just said hello. It's
a start. It's a great start.
Yeah.
And as with any start, a start can grow and expand, and we learn from these basic first attempts, and
Yeah.
we grow from that. And that's what we're doing. I don't talk about it all too much on the internet at the moment because I've still got a little bit to go. I was hoping to have something really great to show at the moment, but
Yeah. Well, hopefully, maybe you feel comfortable to do this again. I'd love to do it with you again. But like I said, working on the soul phone, it's interesting because the soul phone team called it the soul phone, which everybody thinks is going to be like a phone. Right now, it's basically a switch. It's a yes/no type device. So people on the other side can answer yes or no. But it's a start. It's like, and Dr. Schwartz always talks about the Wright brothers, right? The first flight was 12 seconds. But
exactly.
now we fly, intercontinental flights. So you gotta make that first 12-second flight right now. So even if you get, hello through an Apple Watch, that's pretty cool.
And yes, no answers through Schwartz's device. I mean, that's huge. A lot can be done. Spiritualism has used yes, no answers for forever.
Yeah.
And you can go a long way with yes, no answers. Even table tipping is yes, no answers. Tip to the left for yes, tip to the right for no.
Yeah.
So that's still, yes, no has a big place. It's probably the best way to communicate at the moment.
It's a really good start. So well, like I said, we'll see where all this heads. And I've like I said, talked to you for a couple of years. I've told a few people about you. Of course, nobody's heard about you. And I'm like, you got to hear about him because the stuff you're doing, I mean, just the physical mediumship is incredible in itself, but the communication takes it to a whole nother level.
Yeah, well, that's where my head is. I love the technology. And I also think physical mediumship in itself is about showing people that the consciousness continues and that we're still alive.
Yeah.
That's the whole point of physical mediumship. And to know that you can physically interact. These people still have fingers. You can feel fingers when they touch you. And they're not just little clouds of consciousness floating around in the sky, playing harps, doing nothing all day.
Yeah, well, it's interesting that we got several problems to overcome. First, we got the people that say, okay, we cease to exist. I mean, we just lights out, right? And then we've got this whole group of I will call them New Age people that we just become these enlightened clouds of consciousness and there's no physicality to it. And I've heard some communications with people on the other side and they were asking are you physical? They're like, we're just as physical as you are. We're just, vibrating in a different frequency. But yeah, we could still walk and talk and, do all the things that you do.
It's just life on a different frequency, a more appropriate frequency for that state of being after leaving the human experience.
Yeah. Well, Marcus, I got to tell you, I really appreciate you doing this. I was really excited about having this come off, and I'm even more excited now that I had a chance to talk to you and learn more about what you're doing. Well,
I'm really glad I did. So you're my second interview.
Yeah, well, I am honored that you did this, and
no, it felt right because I believe in your cause, especially where you focus where you're doing your bit. I think is a very important cause, and that should be supported by everybody.
Well, I appreciate that. My goal is just to get the word out to as many people as I possibly can about the kind of work that you're doing, and I talk to other mental mediums and people that have near-death experiences and want to share those experiences because, just hearing someone that's gone through that says, hey, I died and I looked at my body. Maybe people hear that enough times, they'll finally realize, we don't die. We don't cease to exist. And those of us like you and me that have, not a loved one in another world know that we're going to see them again. And
absolutely, without doubt.
Rebecca, her consciousness continues. She's, communicating with you. That's wonderful.
And that's the important message that you're helping people realize. And that's why I resonated with you to do this.
Well, I don't want to get greedy, but I'd love to do this again.
I'd be happy to.
When you get to the point where you're ready to demonstrate your stuff, yep. I would just be head over heels to do that with you.
Well, you'll be the first to know.
All right, man. Well, I appreciate you doing this. I know you got your day's just getting started, so I'm going to let you go and start your day, but we'll be in touch.
Oh, great, mate. I really appreciated the chance too.
All right. Hey, thanks for watching. Before you leave, I'd like to just remind you can always find me at www www.grief2growth.com. That's grief2growth.com. And you can schedule a free half-hour consultation if you'd like. Also, before you leave, please click on the like button here, click on subscribe, and click on the bell. By clicking like, YouTube will show the video to more people, and by subscribing and clicking the bell, you'll be notified when I release new material. Thanks for watching, and have a great day.